So in late 2019, something happened that kind of shook the community in a way that they weren't expecting it to. Tyler uploaded a video in response to some images and some videos that were starting to circulate throughout the community. One of the videos that was circulating was of a state patrol officer and several others pulling over responding to a crash in a rural countryside of somebody with a Jeep that looked suspiciously a lot like Tyler Glockner, who was being accused and alleged of having a DUI offense, and he was subsequently arrested. Now, it's important to note that Tyler was released the day after, but it kind of came out of nowhere. And you're talking about somebody who obviously, their biggest following is people who are really into conspiracy theories, so immediately people were very suspicious of the whole thing, essentially wondering what the hell happened. Is this a setup? Or is this something we're not being told? But like I said, have that little nugget in the back of your mind. This was when people started to remember, wait a minute, we know that Tyler's been on antidepressants. Has he officially gone off the deep end? Has he just officially hit a point where he's abusing his medication? And things were kind of starting to line up that way a little bit more when somebody stumbled across a mugshot and some allegations against Tyler Glockner in a separate county, specifically a county where he lived, accusing him of domestic abuse against his spouse. So it was confirmed to be Tyler. I want to get that out of the way. We've never seen any physical proof that he did abuse and beat his wife, but it was confirmed that it was Tyler who was arrested for this, and he was held in jail for a week until he was eventually released. His wife never came forward, never confirmed nor denied. Tyler did come forward and did deny.
All of you who know me, you know I'm a kind man. I couldn't hurt a fly, let alone a woman or my wife. I'm certainly not a drinker. I don't do drugs.
But a lot of people were starting to slip towards this tail end of well, it's very possible that maybe this guy just found something he wasn't supposed to find, like he said in his follow-up video.
Then I started getting threats to shut my channel down, to stop what I was doing, to basically cease and desist.
It's also extremely possible that this guy might kind of be a piece of shit. What are we supposed to make of this? So things were starting to just hit this point where the community was just turning on him. He was really kind of between a rock and a hard place. Obviously, if everything was actually true, then he just got what was coming to him. If it turns out he is indeed being set up, whether by the police or whether by a federal entity or whether by other YouTubers who don't like the fact that he called them out on certain videos and said some of their stuff was fake, whatever the case may be, if it's not true, then it's unfortunate that it's happening the way that it's happening, or I should say happened. But the problem is, if you watch the video where Tyler came forward and kind of said, hey, here's what's happening, here's what I've been accused of, here's my denial, he also mentions how when he was arrested for the domestic abuse charges and held in jail for a week, he says that the guards beat and tortured him.
And spent a week in jail being threatened and beaten by guards at the Knox County Jail.
Now, hear me out, and maybe I'm just spouting some rhetoric here. And so he alleges that they tortured and abused him, that they beat him up for a week straight. And he essentially goes on this little tirade in that video where he just talks about how, he's back, he's stronger than ever, the beatings didn't break him, whatever. I think now's a good time to talk about the theories. You have the relevant information. If you need a bullet point of what the things are you need to be aware of, the short version is like this. In late 2018, Tyler starts dealing with monetization issues and starts dropping off the map due to some family tragedies that we never got any explanation on. In early 2019, he officially is demonetized and starts launching a Patreon campaign. In mid-2019, he starts disappearing and he doesn't really upload anymore, and when he does upload, it's incredibly inconsistent information, or it's a personal update that nobody really knows about. And then in late 2019, there ends up being a video that circulates of him getting arrested for a DUI and a mugshot that circulates with charges of domestic abuse. And then he comes forward and makes a video and says, hey, I'm denying all of it. that's kind of all you really need to know. So let's talk about the pervading theories about what happened to Tyler Glockner and Secure Team 10. So the most common theory you're going to run into is that Tyler Glockner has just been scamming people for years and that he just got away with it because he started a YouTube channel based on this very easy to exploit concept of people that just want to believe in the extraterrestrial. You gotta admit, it's not difficult to make the kind of videos that Tyler made. He did very minimal editing. He had an intro, he had an outro, he talked over a video, basically rambled, didn't really do any scripts. I mean, I know that feeling all too well. And that was basically it. That was his whole spiel. That was all he did. So it's easy to say that, well, it's not like it was exactly difficult to be uploading multiple times a day. I can upload multiple times a day, and my videos end up being significantly longer than the majority of the ones that were on his channel. So it's really hard to dispute that people were definitely correct in saying that his job was probably not all that difficult. Similarly, there were issues where there were reports coming out that he was paid a pretty significant amount of money by people like Dr. Stephen Greer to promote the documentaries that he worked on. This particular issue, though, I have to kind of circumvent all the way back to something I said earlier. If I was getting offered to work on a documentary, I'd probably be promoting it on my channel too. I know that some people kind of see that as like selling out, and I don't know why. Like, that seems to only be like held to content creators, and for some reason people that do that for an everyday job don't get called out for it. It's not selling out to promote a product that you put time, effort, and blood into. Even if he didn't specifically work on the documentary, if he got offered money to promote it on a channel because the content is extremely relevant to what you make, it's at that point, it's just a sponsorship. Now, it'd be one thing if you denied getting any money from them, and you in fact did, because at that point, then you're just a piece of shit for denying it. But as far as I'm aware, I don't think Tyler ever denied getting paid to feature some of his documentaries and to talk about them and to talk about some of the footage that was in them. That's perfectly normal. That shouldn't really be held against him. What should be held against him is continuing to run a Patreon campaign despite the fact that he was making a shit ton of money off of YouTube, and he was uploading consistently. Like I said, if not near constantly, he was not struggling for money. We know that much. So the leading theory, I shouldn't really say leading, the most common theory is that Tyler essentially scammed people for years. That he essentially was just trying to run a long con of like, how much money can I make before I officially hit a point where somebody's content that I talked about or some kind of entity comes after me and all of my shit goes away. Hypothetically, that could be exactly what happened. If he was smart and saved up as much of his money as he could, it's highly possible that he may have just vanished because he's like, hey, I did what I needed to do. I got the money I needed to make, and we're done. The other theory that seems to get thrown around almost as frequently is that he's telling the truth and that Tyler Glockner was indeed the subject of a massive setup. The problem when it comes to that is that, like I said towards the beginning of the video, you kind of have to just make assumptions, because outside of like things that you can just kind of tie to other events, there's really no proof of a setup. Yes, he hypothetically got busted for a false DUI, but then we also have evidence of him admitting to using antidepressants. It's very possible he may have overdosed. We then have reports of, supposedly false domestic abuse claims. But again, the guy admitted to using antidepressants. It's very possible he may have gone overboard. And there's been videos of him at a rehab. He clearly had a problem at one point or another. It's very possible that that's why he was let go so quickly. Not because they were false, but because if he was under a drug inducement and it wasn't really held against him, and maybe his wife was like, no, it wasn't really Tyler, it was just Tyler being so fucked up on pills he had no idea what he was doing, that could very well be maybe why he never had anything happen to him, like really like hard official like time. Now, granted, that doesn't really set up any evidence of a setup, And that's kind of my point, is that saying that there was a setup is like people that just want there to be a conspiracy around Tyler Glockner and Secure Team 10. And I think the reality is, guys, is that it's neither of those things. I think that what we're seeing from Tyler Glockner and from what little updates we got were actually true. But I think that it was true only to the extent of what Tyler wanted you to know. And what I mean by that is, like I was saying before, if the people around him were vouching for him, saying, no, Tyler's just a really good guy, he just went through a really rough patch and he abused some of the medication he was given, I don't hold it against him, then that may just be where everything lands, guys. That may just be the harsh reality of Tyler Glockner. He may have just been somebody that just got, too high off of his own supply. He got, he just had too much of a family tragedy happen at one point in his life. He broke at one point and he just consistently ruined his life. It happens to the best of us, and it happens to a lot of people in the entertainment industry. Make no mistake, Tyler was an entertainer. He has an explore talent profile. The guy is technically an actor. I'm sure that you've seen that picture thrown around before, and even if it's falsified, even if it's photoshopped, you gotta admit the guy was pretty good at reeling you in. The guy was an entertainer. This is just the sad reality of Tyler Glockner and what I've been able to uncover as far as the controversy around him goes. Yes, there are definitely some very suspicious elements to it, and considering the content that he worked on, it's highly probable that he may have just stumbled across something that he was not allowed to have, and the federal government and the US military said, fuck it, dude, you're going away then. That's extremely possible, guys. It's happened before. It will never stop happening. It's equally plausible that the community was right on course and what they said was true, that Tyler Glockner is a toxic piece of shit who essentially just got away with making hundreds of thousands of dollars and hundreds of thousands of sponsorships and essentially got off scot-free and just vanished and now occasionally updates his social media to make sure that people aren't going to come after him. Or, like I said, there's elements of truth to both sides, but the really sad reality is that Tyler Glockner may just be yet one more person who became far too successful, who didn't know how to handle it, and then when combined with a tragedy that he wasn't expecting, he fell down a rabbit hole that is extremely difficult to get out of, and he unfortunately reaped the results of it. So that is going to be it for this video, guys. I apologize for how long this one turned out. I was not really expecting to actually be able to talk about this for as long as I did, and yes, there is definitely some rambling in this video. But let me know what you think of Tyler Glockner and the Secure Team 10 controversy, and what do you think actually happened to him? Like I said, I have my own theories as to what happened. Obviously, you just listen to them for 30 minutes if you watch the whole video. But regardless, I'm curious to see what you people think. I'm curious to see if, anybody really can come to a consensus on it. So be sure to leave a comment about it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Be sure to like the video as well. Check out our other content if you'd like. And I will talk to you next time.